When HOA President Richard Sterling sent fake police officers to my house with forged warrants, I thought it was a scam. They broke in, stole my tools, and claimed authority over my non-HOA property. Then real cops arrived and arrested them all for burglary and impersonating officers. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. I never thought I'd have to deal with fake cops breaking into my house, but here we are. My name is Alex Carter, and I live in a small house on Maple Street that I inherited from my aunt 2 years ago. It's nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom place with a small yard where I grow tomatoes and keep my motorcycle. The house is old but comfortable, and most importantly, it's mine. The problem started when Prestige Gardens, a fancy gated community, was built across the street from my neighborhood. Prestige Gardens is one of those developments where every house costs $500,000 and every resident thinks they're royalty. The community came with an HOA that had more rules than the military. No pets over 20 pounds. No cars parked on streets overnight. No outdoor decorations except during approved holidays. No music audible from neighboring properties. The list went on for pages. The HOA president was a man named Richard Sterling, who owned a Mercedes dealership and thought money gave him the right to control everyone around him. Richard was in his 50s, always wore expensive suits, and had the personality of a tax audit. I first encountered Richard 3 months after Prestige Gardens opened. I was working on my motorcycle in my driveway when a black BMW pulled up to my curb. Richard got out wearing a 3-piece suit and carrying a leather briefer. "Excuse me," he called out in a voice that sounded like he was addressing a servant. "Are you the homeowner here?" "Yeah, I'm Alex. Can I help you?" Richard looked at my house like it was contaminated. His eyes stopped on my motorcycle, and his expression changed from mild disapproval to complete disgust. "That vehicle," he said, pointing at my perfectly legal motorcycle, "is completely inappropriate for this neighborhood." I was confused. "It's my motorcycle. I park it in my own driveway. It's loud, unsightly, and negatively impacts property values for the entire area. It needs to be removed immediately." "Sir, this is my house and my driveway. I can park whatever I want here." Richard pulled out a folder from his briefcase and handed me an official-looking document. According to the Prestige Gardens Community Standards Agreement, all residents within the designated area must comply with vehicle and noise restrictions. Your motorcycle violates multiple regulations. I read the document, which was full of legal-sounding language about community harmony and property value protection. At the bottom was a map showing the enforcement zone that somehow included my street, even though my street wasn't part of Prestige Gardens. "Mr. Sterling, I don't live in your community. My house isn't part of your HOA. You have no authority over what I do on my own property." Richard smiled like he was explaining something to a child. "Actually, when Prestige Gardens was developed, the city expanded our enforcement zone to include adjacent properties that impact our community's aesthetic standards. Your property falls within our jurisdiction." "That's impossible. I never signed any HOA agreement. The agreement is tied to the geographical area, not individual consent. All properties within the enforcement zone are subject to our regulations, whether the owners like it or not." I knew this sounded wrong, but Richard seemed so confident that I started to doubt myself. Maybe there was some city ordinance I didn't know about. "I'll need to research this before I make any changes to my property." Richard's smile disappeared. "Mr. Carter, you have 72 hours to remove the motorcycle and bring your property into compliance. Failure to do so will result in enforcement action." "What kind of enforcement action?" "The kind that ensures community standards are maintained." After Richard left, I called my friend Jake, who works in city planning. He laughed when I described my conversation with the HOA president. "Alex, that's complete nonsense. HOAs can't just expand their authority to include properties they don't own. They can't make you follow their rules unless you specifically agreed to join their association." But Richard seemed so sure about the legal authority. He's lying or delusional? Probably both. Just ignore him. So I did. I kept parking my motorcycle in my driveway and went about my normal routine. 3 days later, I found a violation notice taped to my front door. It was an official-looking document with the Prestige Gardens logo, informing me that I was in serious violation of community standards and faced immediate enforcement action. I threw the notice in the trash and forgot about it. That was a mistake. The following week, Richard escalated his campaign. I started receiving violation notices every other day for increasingly ridiculous infractions. Inappropriate lawn maintenance because my grass was a 1/4 inch too long. Unauthorized outdoor equipment, because I had a garden hose visible from the street. Violation of quiet hours, because I started my motorcycle at 7:30 a.m. to go to work. Improper refuse storage, because my garbage can was visible on non-pickup days. Each notice threatened enforcement action if I didn't immediately comply with HOA regulations that I had never agreed to follow. I continued ignoring them, but Richard was just getting started. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find a man in a security uniform standing in my front yard with a clipboard. He was wearing a badge that said HOA Enforcement Officer, and had a radio clipped to his belt. "Are you Alex Carter?" he asked when I got out of my car. "Yeah, who are you?" "I'm Officer Mike Patterson with Prestige Gardens Security. I'm here to conduct a compliance inspection of your property." "Hey, what?" "We've received multiple reports of ongoing violations. I need to document the current state of your property for enforcement purposes." The guy started walking around my yard, taking pictures of my motorcycle, my garden tools, and even my mailbox. "Hold on," I said. "You can't just walk around my property taking pictures. This isn't part of your HOA. Sir, according to the Community Enforcement Zone map, your property is subject to Prestige Gardens oversight. I'm authorized to conduct necessary inspections. You're not authorized to do anything on my property. Please leave." "Sir, interfering with an official HOA inspection is a violation that could result in additional penalties." I was getting angry, but I didn't want to escalate the situation into a confrontation. "I'm asking you politely to leave my property. If you don't, I'll call the real police." The fake security officer finished taking his pictures and handed me another violation notice. "Mr. Carter, your property has 17 separate code violations. You have 48 hours to achieve full compliance or face enforcement action." "What kind of enforcement action?" "The kind necessary to maintain community standards." After he left, I called Jake again and told him about the fake security officer. "Alex, this is harassment. That guy has no legal authority to inspect your property or issue violations. You should file a police report." "Maybe I should just move. This is getting crazy." "Don't let them bully you off your own property. Stand your ground." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone pounding on my front door. I looked through the window and saw 2 men in security uniforms standing on my porch. I opened the door and immediately noticed that both men were wearing badges that said HOA Police Department. One was tall and thin, the other was short and stocky. Both looked like they took themselves very seriously. "Alex Carter?" the tall one asked. "Yeah, what do you want?" "I'm Officer Davis and this is Officer Johnson. We're with the Prestige Gardens Police Department. We have a warrant to enter your property and remove violations." "You have a what now?" Officer Davis handed me a document that looked like an official warrant. It was printed on fancy letterhead and had several official-looking stamps and signatures. "This warrant authorizes us to enter your property and remove any items that violate community standards. You need to step aside and allow us to do our job." I read the document quickly. It was full of legal language, but it didn't look like any court warrant I'd ever seen. The signatures at the bottom were from HOA Magistrate Richard Sterling and Community Standards Judge Patricia Mills. "This isn't a real warrant," I said. "You guys aren't real police officers. The HOA doesn't have a police department." "Sir, we are certified law enforcement officers operating under the authority of the Prestige Gardens Municipal Authority. This warrant is legally binding. Prestige Gardens isn't a municipality. It's just a neighborhood development." Officer Johnson stepped forward aggressively. "Sir, you can either cooperate with our investigation or be arrested for obstruction of justice." I was starting to feel genuinely threatened. These guys were either completely delusional or running some kind of elaborate scam. "I'm going to call the real police," I said, pulling out my phone. "Sir, put the phone down and step away from the door." That's when Officer Davis pushed past me and entered my house, followed by Officer Johnson. "Hey," I shouted. "You can't just come into my house." "We have a warrant," Davis replied as he started looking around my living room. I immediately dialed 911. "This is Alex Carter at 247 Maple Street. 2 men claiming to be police officers have broken into my house with a fake warrant. I need real police here immediately." "Sir, are you in immediate danger?" "Yes, 2 men have forced their way into my home. They're claiming to be HOA police, but that's not a real thing. Units are on the way. Try to stay on the line and keep yourself safe." Meanwhile, the fake officers were walking through my house like they owned it. Davis was taking pictures of everything while Johnson was making notes on his clipboard. "Your television is too large for community standards," Johnson announced. Televisions visible through windows cannot exceed 42 inches. Your kitchen violates the color scheme requirements, Davis added. The cabinets are an unapproved shade of blue. They went into my bedroom and started going through my closet. These clothes will need to be replaced, Johnson said, holding up one of my band t-shirts. Clothing with inappropriate graphics violates community decency standards. I followed them around with my phone, recording everything they were doing. You guys are completely insane. You're trespassing in my house and making up random violations. Sir, we're conducting an official inspection under lawful authority. Your resistance is being noted for additional charges. They went into my garage and saw my motorcycle repair tools. This unauthorized mechanical equipment needs to be confiscated, Davis declared. That's when they started putting my tools into bags they had brought with them. Stop, I yelled. You're stealing my property. We're removing violations under warrant authority, Johnson replied. I heard sirens approaching and felt a wave of relief. The real police were finally here. 2 sheriff's deputies burst through my front door with their hands on their weapons. Police, everyone freeze. The fake HOA officers immediately stopped what they were doing and raised their hands. Officers, we're law enforcement conducting an authorized search, Davis called out. No, you're not, I said quickly. These men broke into my house claiming to be HOA police with a fake warrant. Deputy Martinez, who I recognized from high school, looked at the fake officers with confusion. Let me see your badges and identification. Davis and Johnson handed over their HOA badges and ID cards. Deputy Martinez examined them and shook his head. These aren't police badges. These are private security company IDs. Who authorized you to enter this house? We have a warrant from the Prestige Gardens Municipal Authority, Davis replied, handing over the fake document. Deputy Martinez read it and started laughing. This isn't a warrant. This is some kind of HOA memo with fake signatures. Prestige Gardens isn't a municipal authority. It's just a housing development. We were told this was legal authority, Johnson said, suddenly looking nervous. You were told wrong. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, theft and impersonating police officers. As the deputies handcuffed the fake officers, Davis was still protesting. This is a mistake. We're certified HOA enforcement officers. Richard Sterling authorized this operation. Richard Sterling isn't a judge or a police chief, Deputy Martinez replied. He's a car salesman who runs a neighborhood association. The deputies searched the fake officers and found more fake badges, forged warrants, and a list of other properties they planned to inspect that day. How many houses were you planning to break into? Deputy Martinez asked. We weren't breaking in, Johnson insisted. We were conducting lawful inspections of non-compliant properties. With fake badges and forged warrants. That's called burglary. 20 minutes later, Richard Sterling arrived at my house in his BMW. He was wearing his usual expensive suit and carrying his leather briefcase. Officers, there's been a misunderstanding, he announced as he got out of his car. These men are my employees conducting authorized community enforcement. Deputy Martinez turned to face Richard. Are you Richard Sterling? Yes, I'm the president of the Prestige Gardens Homeowners Association. Mr. Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit burglary, fraud, and directing the impersonation of police officers. Richard's confident expression disappeared instantly. What? You can't arrest me? I'm a respected businessman. These were legitimate community enforcement activities. Mr. Sterling, you sent fake police officers with forged warrants to break into people's houses. That's organized crime, not community enforcement. As Richard was being handcuffed, he was still insisting that he had legal authority over my property. This house falls within our enforcement zone. The city granted us expanded jurisdiction. This is all completely legal. Sir, HOAs can't create fake police departments and break into people's houses. You're going to prison. The arrest of Richard Sterling and his fake police officers made the local news that evening. HOA president arrested for operating fake police department became a viral story that was shared thousands of times on social media. The investigation revealed that Richard had been running his fake police operation for 6 months. He had hired private security guards, given them fake badges, and sent them to enforce HOA rules on properties that weren't even part of his association. The fake warrants were printed on official-looking paper with forged signatures from made-up officials. Richard had created an entire fictional legal system to justify his harassment of neighbors who refused to follow his rules. During the trial, prosecutors discovered that Richard's fake police had broken into 12 different houses, stealing property and intimidating residents who couldn't afford lawyers to fight back. Richard was sentenced to 3 years in prison for burglary, fraud, and operating a criminal enterprise. His fake officers received shorter sentences in exchange for testifying against him. The Prestige Gardens HOA was sued by every victim of Richard's fake police operation. The association's insurance company refused to cover damages from criminal activities, so the HOA had to pay settlements from their reserves and special assessments on every member. The new HOA president issued a public apology and formal acknowledgement that their association had no authority over any property outside their development boundaries. I received a settlement of $50,000 for the harassment and illegal entry. I used the money to install a security system and take a nice vacation to recover from the stress of dealing with fake police breaking into my house. The best part was watching Richard Sterling, who had strutted around in expensive suits threatening people with fake legal authority, being led away in handcuffs for running a criminal enterprise disguised as an HOA. My motorcycle is still parked in my driveway, my grass is still whatever length I want it to be, and no one from Prestige Gardens has bothered me since their president went to prison. Sometimes the best way to deal with bullies who think they're above the law is to let them get arrested by the real law.